Hi, hello, and welcome to Den of Otaku, Den of Geek's official anime discussion series where we break down all things anime, Japanese pop culture, and just the biggest developments going on in the industry. I am your host, Daniel Kurland, and in this episode, everybody, we are joining across and we are going all in on citywide domination as we obsess over the 2000s fringe comedy Excel Saga. We're going to talk about why Excel Saga is such a groundbreaking and boundary-pushing gag series. We're going to talk about its very innovative and unique approach to adaptation and genre deconstruction, and also just kind of the legacy that Excel Saga has left behind, if any. So let's do it, fellow otaku. There is one Earth, but if we split it in half, there are two. Excel Saga is a show I think about quite a bit. It is over 25 years old, but it is still, in my opinion, one of the funniest shows of all time. And we talk about all the heightened things that anime can do as a medium, why it is so exciting, but I don't necessarily think enough people talk about anime comedy and kind of the power that the comedy genre has in anime. I would go so far as to say I think some of the funniest gags I have seen in my life have come out of anime. There's just a heightened quality to certain anime jokes that hits harder. I don't fully understand it, like if part of it has to do with reading the subtitles and getting kind of like a disconnect from what you're reading and seeing on the screen, but there's just such an exciting nature to how anime goes about comedy that is really interesting to me and really helps just humor grow in general. And Excel Saga, I think, is one of the better examples of that, and the things it was doing 25 years ago are things that are still very impressive today. I mean, this show really made a name for itself by just kind of breaking boundaries and doing very eccentric stuff. For instance, like one of the biggest things about this show is that the lead voice actor in the English dub, Jessica Calvello, had to quit after the 13th episode and was replaced with Larissa Walcott because her voice was destroyed from voicing this character. Excel is a character that talks so fast and is so relentless that her voice was being like ruined, and they said if you continue to voice this character, your voice is going to be messed up. You're going to have to quit voice acting.
There is one Earth! If it splits in half, there'll be two! All of mankind is scum and beautiful!
Running errands is a minion specialty! Hot stuff! And please don't ask any questions about how I got back this time, okay?
I mean, that in itself is just so ridiculous and in kind of a testament to how far people were willing to go for this show, that people would pour everything they had into Excel Saga, and that it has this chaotic, just unpredictable energy. I mean, there are a lot of modern comedies now that are great, stuff like Osamatsu-san, Penny Pony Dash, Nishijo, Gintama is one of my favorite comedies, even something like Space Dandy. All of these shows are pushing boundaries in the same way that Excel Saga was, but I don't think any of them would necessarily exist without the doors that Excel Saga opened up in the first place. And to me, it's interesting that I never hear anyone talking about Excel Saga. And I didn't know if it was kind of a case where sometimes a show was out of print on DVD or it cost like $300 to get the Excel Saga box set, and that's why people don't know about it. But this is the opposite. When I looked it up, you can get the entire series of Excel Saga for $30 on DVD. It's readily streaming on Crunchyroll and Amazon Prime Video. So this is a show that is easy to find, it's cheap to find, it's out there, yet people still can't really key into it. And so I thought it would be important to kind of just shine a light on why this show is so special and why it's doing a really unique approach to comedy adaptation and just the nature of like how anime approaches genre.
Excel used all the Spanish and ghetto words she can remember, but perhaps that was a mistake.
Shit!
Ah! Break down in U.S. Japan relations!
So when it comes to Excel Saga's story, this is really a show that at face value is about a bunch of revolutionaries who want to take over the city. It's a very fun spin on the idea of world domination. They think world domination is a little too lofty of a goal, so it's like, why not start with city domination? That is technically what the show is about, but it really becomes kind of a love letter to anime itself, why anime is the way it is, and just how anime is created in the first place. It really becomes this fascinating meta conversation on adaptation and genre deconstruction that I think is just so cool. And just to kind of set the scene a little, a show like this is impressive now, but it really felt incredible to discover Excel Saga's dub back in 2001. I mean, the anime landscape was very different at that time. Like, mainstream anime streaming services weren't really a thing. You weren't gonna find anime readily available on television. So if you discovered Excel Saga, this was really just like a leap of faith that you were taking, that you were seeing it on a store's shelves and being like, this looks weird, this looks interesting, let me check it out. You really had to just go on vibes and faith, and that was a big deal at the time. And at the same time too, Excel Saga is a show that is dense in anime references and Easter eggs, and really just throwing so much at you that is being pulled from anime pop culture. Back in 2001, we didn't have like robust subreddits or Discord channels that are like, here's every anime reference in Excel Saga episode 5. Those things didn't exist back then. So for somebody to watch the show and really pick up everything it was putting down was like harder back then, but it also felt so special. This was a show that really did feel like magic when you watched it back in 2001. It was an anomaly back then. I think though, if you released Excel Saga today, it would clean up. This is exactly the type of show that we're making today, that people love, that people are impressed by, that people are like, this is what I want from an anime. This show was doing all of that decades ago, and this is why you really need to check it out and see what it's doing.
Stop right there! Cease your posturing, you middle-aged bullied addict plotting to send people to the depths of terror in the name of sports!
We love context in Den of Otaku. I always think it's interesting when we're talking about different series or different creators to kind of just look back at their careers and everything they've done. Because even if it's explicit or not, I think everything that somebody works on influences them, changes who they are, and really changes the product they make, even if it doesn't seem like it. And I think that's so interesting when it comes to the art of creation. I mean, Evangelion is a perfect example of like that anime became what it was because of Hideaki Anno's just grief and depression that he was going through at the time. So I always think it's a good idea to kind of just take a step back and look at the people who are responsible for these series to kind of better understand what they're trying to do and what the show is trying to do. So in the case of Excel Saga, this is really the brainchild of two people. We have Koshi Rikdo, who created the manga, and then we have Shinichi Watanabe, who is the anime's director. So you have these two people who are involved in these two different sides of the anime, but are ultimately working together. And what's so interesting about both Rikdo and Watanabe is they both had relatively like normal careers before working on Excel Saga. Excel Saga is really kind of just this burst of lunacy for both of them, that perhaps the aspect of working together really just brought out their more eccentric tendencies. It's really a fascinating kind of thing. Like, if you look back at Rikdo, he really grew out of the comic fan doujinshi scene. Doujinshis are kind of like unofficial fan manga that exists. It's kind of like zines. It's kind of like the manga equivalent of zines. He was a big personality in that scene, and he kind of first found fame with a one-volume manga called Municipal Force Daitenzen. And this is basically just like an adult parody of Power Rangers. A fun idea, like why not do like a horny adult Power Rangers? Sure, that's great. But what's interesting about Rikdo is Municipal Force Daitenzen, all of those characters eventually show up in Excel Saga. They're characters in that universe, and the whole reason that Koshi Rikdo made Excel Saga in the first place is that he kind of fell in love with the Excel character from Municipal Force Daitenzen and wanted to explore more of her. So he made a whole series to explore her, and then that kind of dwarfed the source material that she came from. What I think is so interesting about that, and maybe this is just innocuous or not, but this is another example we've seen of somebody who did an early series, a one-shot or what have you, that then kind of influenced their biggest claim to fame. And we've seen this a number of times now. We saw this with Kohei Horikoshi with My Hero Academia, Yuto Suzuki with Sakamoto Days, even Taishun Pak with Viral Hit 2. These are all people who did an early work that was kind of like a fun, interesting idea that was then didn't really explode until they did something else with it. And I just think it's so interesting when you see these creators return to something that they did before. Now that they've learned a little more, that they've become more competent storytellers, maybe they're approaching that idea from a different angle, but it's just so cool to me when you see these people return to those ideas, not as like a failure or something that didn't work, but something they want to re-examine and go even further with. And the thing is, this isn't really the norm with mangaka. It's not like Akira Toriyama did like a Dragon Ball one-shot that then became Dragon Ball. This is a bit of an anomaly, so the fact that it's happened with 4 of the different people that we've looked at on Den of Otaku, I think is really cool. Something I'm definitely going to keep an eye open for with future things we look at, but I think it's just a really interesting example of how people create stories and the kind of trajectory that they can get on. And beyond Municipal Force Daitenzen, Rikdo also did another 6-volume manga called Holy Brownie that's about 2 dolls that are reanimated by like divine powers, and then they help answer people's prayers. It's a very silly show. There's a lot of the DNA of Excel and Hyatt from Excel Saga in the 2 dolls from Holy Brownie. So in a lot of ways, it does feel like Koshi Rikdo has taken elements from Municipal Force Daitenzen and Holy Brownie and channeled all that together when he created Excel Saga.
Target lock on.
My name is Rikdo, and I draw manga all day long.
When it comes to Shinichi Watanabe, the anime's director, he also went down a very similar path. He had very normal shows. One was a children's anime called Tokyo Pig that's about like a pig who writes in his diary and that changes the future. He had another show called Gravitation Lyrics of Love that's about like a struggling boy band's efforts to make it big. These are fine shows, but like they're not what you'd think of when you see Shinichi Watanabe. And to that point, this guy is such an interesting figure. You wouldn't think that he's such a weirdo when you look at something like his earliest work, but Excel Saga really feels like it let his freak flag fly, as they say. Like, he really goes out of control. Shinichi Watanabe, in real life, dresses as Lupin III all the time. He dresses as that anime character. He has a huge afro on top of that. He often goes by the pseudonym Nabashin, which is like a combination of Watanabe and Shinichi, but he said that the Nabashin name is a name that was given to him by God and something that he like had to embrace. He really just embraces this cult of personality that surrounds him. Like, he inserts himself as Nabashin in Excel Saga and Puny Puny Poemi, but he also appears in the other anime he works on, like The Wallflower and Gravitation, as if he sees himself as like an anime IP with crossover potential. He really views himself as a brand. He's putting himself in shows, and it's just such an odd approach to something that I haven't really seen with any other anime auteurs to that. And to just go one step further, like, his name, Shinichi Watanabe, is like suspiciously close to Shinichiro Watanabe, who is the creator of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, and just like one of the most revered anime directors that there is. I'm not saying that this is what happened, but it almost feels like how Bill Murray did the Garfield film because he thought the Coen brothers did it, but it was like a different Coen and he got confused. I don't think Shinichi Watanabe is trying to trick people, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody agreed to do one of his shows because they thought they were working with Shinichiro Watanabe, and then they're working with this guy. Very interesting though. Nothing that Shinichi Watanabe has done after Excel Saga has kind of hit the same heights, but he's just such a creative individual that I've never kind of seen before in the field. And so Koshi Rikdo and Shinichi Watanabe are a big part of Excel Saga's DNA. The final kind of ingredient is just the animation studio itself, JC staff. And kind of like Rikdo and Watanabe, this is another anime studio that isn't known for being particularly weird. They're a great studio that, like, some of their biggest hits are like Psyche K, Food Wars, Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, the second season of One Punch Man onward. So they've done some great hits, all very normal mainstream shows though. Back when they did Excel Saga, they had only really been around for a little over a decade at this point. At that point, their biggest titles were Revolutionary Girl Utena, Karakano, Sorceress Stabber Orphan. Again, good shows, but very normal shows. And JC Staff isn't the studio you would think of to do something as weird as Excel Saga, but they truly knock it out of the park. They do an incredible job. They go above and beyond with how they adapt this series, and it's really a fantastic thing. It's really kind of nuts that they didn't do weird shows like Excel Saga after the fact. This kind of like burnt them out, and they returned to simpler fare. JC Staff 2 is also doing great stuff now. They had some of my favorite anime out of 2024 and 2025. They had Demon Lord 2099, Magia Lumiere Company, Honey Lemon Soda 2 is them. So they're still doing really exciting stuff. I just think they've never hit the heights of Excel Saga, and that's a show that really kind of activated them in a way that I haven't seen before.
Look, why don't you just try to... And you're eating stew? How do I get out of this anime hell?
One of the most exciting things I think about Excel Saga is just how it handles the art of adaptation. Sometimes it's great when an anime one-for-one adapts a manga, and it's great. Sure, you did a great job at adaptation, but some of the more impressive things are shows that really understand the energy of a manga and do their own thing in a way that's not disrespecting the source material, but just creating an alternative package that is taking advantage of the medium. Like, at the end of the day, anime is different than manga, and there are some things that are going to work better told that way, and Excel Saga really takes advantage of that. What I think is so cool here, the anime really only touches on the first 5 volumes of Koshi Rikdo's 27-volume saga, so you're really only getting a fraction of Excel Saga's manga here. You can read the manga and get what's essentially a very different story. There's a whole third member of a cross that's introduced in the manga that never appears in the anime. So there are even different characters in the manga that if you only watch the anime, you would have no idea about. And kind of the inverse of that too, the anime in its adaptation introduces a lot of new characters that I think honestly add a lot to the picture. You have Nabashin, who we talked about, who is the anime's director and kind of is in the anime's universe as a self-insert that kind of has powers too. You have a character, Pedro, but at the end of the day, there's also a character called Great Will of the Macrocosm, who is like an omniscient god narrator who has the power to restart time, to rewind time, and it's kind of playing on the anime trope of like a god character who can literally solve situations by starting over a timeline. I mean, Dragon Ball is a very recent example of this. There are characters who can literally rewind time if the Earth is blown up to solve a situation. Excel Saga plays with that by taking a narrator, making them a tangible character, and then giving them their own actual plot lines. Like, the Great Will of the Macrocosm has like an affair scandal, there's maybe a pregnancy scare going on. To give a narrator god these powers and storylines is just so silly to me. The first episode of Excel Saga struggles to get moving because Excel keeps dying so many times. The Great Will has to keep restarting the episode over, and by the time she finally stops dying, you don't have any time left for an actual story. Things like that are so funny to me. Like, it's akin to if you know, like in Dragon Ball Z, where you have your classic narrator who's like, on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z, if you panned the camera over, saw him as an actual character, and then he helped the heroes defeat Cell, that's the equivalent of what Excel Saga is doing. It's taking these archetypes and making them actual players in the story who can be messed around with. That is so funny to me. We talked about Space Dandy doing similar stuff with that, but Excel Saga really set the standard on that in the first place. Another really funny example too is there's like a character that's sharing a secret and they're like, whatever you do, don't tell that man. And you think that they're just talking in a general sense, don't tell that man. But you learn that that character's name is literally that man. That man is a villain in Excel Saga, and it's such like a Mel Brooks type of joke that is in this show that is just hammered down so many times it becomes normalized. And Excel Saga just has fun in a way that you don't really see too often. I mean, there are modern anime now, like Cromartie High School came around a few years after Excel Saga that I think does a really good job too. But again, Excel Saga was the front runner in all this, and it's really kind of marvelous.
Sorry, dude.
You're pissing me off!
You're never gonna be a god, dude. You'll always just be that man.
Yeah.
Now, expanding on the point of just how Excel Saga is such a marvel of adaptation, the other side of this is just how it approaches genre deconstruction. There are plenty of anime that do a different genre in every episode or are really playing with the medium itself. Excel Saga is not alone in this. What I think Excel Saga does differently, though, is it really takes a community-like approach to it, where they do these concept episodes where the different genres they're playing with have an active purpose when it comes to character development or storytelling. They're connected to what's going on and something that's not just gratuitous at the end of the day. And it becomes an exercise, once again, in adaptation. So you have Excel Saga constantly reinventing itself in every episode. You have an episode that becomes like a mecha anime. You have an episode that becomes a magical girl series. There's a Pokemon like parody episode. You have sports episodes. You have high school drama kind of stuff. One of my favorite episodes is Excel has a pet dog who is actually the emergency food supply ration that, like, it's a dog who has to live in fear that if Excel ever runs out of money, they're going to eat the dog. So this dog is always trying to escape. In this episode, Menchi the dog does escape, and you kind of get this dog-driven story where the world is full of dogs. It's very much like Homeward Bound, but on acid. So funny. There's another episode where, like, the characters who sing the show's theme song become actual figures in a storyline who are competing with Excel and Hyatt. That, too, is a really brilliant idea. There is one episode that has no jokes in it, because the joke itself is that there are no gags in it. Like, this is the type of stuff that Excel Saga does that most other series would be like, that's too much. Excel Saga never says too much. They do a great episode that's all about fan service and titillation and stuff, and in order to do the best version of this, they literally ban all the male characters from being in this episode. So it's just female characters as a way to boost ratings and kind of just gratuitously make fun of the male gaze. It's such a funny idea. And just, we talk about genre parodies that are going on in this show, but there's even an episode where Excel goes to America, and it becomes a whole commentary on America's relationship with Japanimation and the act of adaptation itself. And in order to save the day, Excel has to take lessons that she's learned from American television and Japanese television, put them together, and fix everything. And it's so smart. I mean, in that case, that's not just a genre deconstruction. It's like a deconstruction of how culture exists and how culture consumes and adapts different stories. Like, that is so smart, and an idea that's just punching way above its weight. I mean, this is why I love Excel Saga. It does stuff like that that really just makes you think about storytelling. It's so cool.
Beating bad guys can be full of humor! Viva animation!
What all of this does, though, is it turns Excel Saga into a show that is such a love letter to anime, but it's just so dense in anime references that it's such a good way to introduce somebody to the medium. I mean, if you're a diehard anime fan, you're gonna love all these references that are peppered around, but if you've never seen anime before too, this is a great way to learn what the big cultural reference points are and the shows that you want to check out. One of my favorite things about what the Excel Saga DVD does is they have like a pop-up video style special feature that whenever something gets mentioned, there's a little screen that tells you what the reference is, why this line is being said, what it comes from. And because Excel Saga is moving at such a relentless speed, these pop-up videos happen at a speed that's almost like impossible to read. You have to be pausing the screen. And even by watching Excel Saga with these pop-up videos on, you're creating a more chaotic experience for yourself. So I just love that that special feature helps you understand the show better, but it also adds further chaos that makes Excel Saga feel more like Excel Saga. It's a really creative, interesting approach here. What's also exciting about all of this too is I think Excel Saga really becomes a meta conversation on the act of adaptation. Each episode basically begins with Koshi Rikdo, the manga creator, giving permission for the Excel Saga anime to transform itself into a mecha anime, into a magical girl anime, or whatever you want. So it becomes this running gag that each episode requires the manga's creator to allow the anime to make these changes. They're not just making it, they're receiving permission to do it, so you can't complain about it. But sometimes they're even holding the creator under duress and like threatening to kill him. So he's giving permission, but it's under these very heightened circumstances that I think is very funny. the last episode of Excel Saga, it features a huge fight between Koshi Rikdo and Nabashin, Shinichi Watanabe's analog character. So in this case, you're literally getting a fight between the manga creator and the anime director over who gets to like control the series. It's such a fun meta experiment. It's the type of thing that you'd see in like the rebuild of Evangelion films. Some people would say that's maybe too much, that's maybe too on the nose, but it feels like the perfect way for the series to end, especially when so much of Excel Saga has been about the art of adaptation. And to be talking about how Excel Saga approaches adaptation, I think we do also need to just briefly look at the English dub, because a dub is also a form of adaptation, and I think this is a rare instance of when the dub is actually better than the original version. Not that there's anything wrong with the original version, but like I said, Jessica Calvello destroyed her voice to bring Excel to life. This is the level of passion that's going on here, and you can tell that the people who made this anime dub were fans, that they truly cared about it. And in the anime dub's case, I think you're getting extra jokes that don't exist in the original version. When it comes to some of the casting decisions they make, when it comes to some of the dialogue choices they make, you're getting extra references to other anime dubs. So Excel Saga, once again, is adding to the meta conversation with its English dub, which is an impressive thing. It's hard to do. It has a very Ghost Stories mentality with how much fun is being had, but at the same time, it's being faithful to the source material, so you can't get angry with it. It really is cool. And just, once again, to kind of build on that, the DVDs themselves were so passionate, and it really makes you think back to what an anime DVD could do at the end of the day. I mean, we talked about the special features of like the pop-up video and stuff, but there's so many fun things on these DVDs. They have Easter eggs hidden on them that if you put the DVD in like a CD-ROM drive, if you put it in your laptop, there are extra things to discover and unlock there. They really go above and beyond with like extra goodies that are included in the DVDs. Like there's all these paper craft stuff. I mean, okay, let me show you. I got the goods here, okay? So these are the things that each DVD would have an extra thing, and these are just fun extra, like this is an across business card. This is like a propaganda poster that's going on here. This is the coolest thing. It's like a paper wrestling ring with Excel Saga characters where you like kind of do thumb wars with them. And then this is just like a cool postcard that you send to someone to be like, hey, watch Excel Saga. We love Excel Saga. Just some fun art that you're not gonna find anywhere else. It might not be a big deal, like you don't really need an Excel Saga papercraft wrestling thing, but the thing is, those are the type of things that you'd find now on like a limited edition full series collector set. They were just putting stuff like that in each DVD, and in that sense, I think how the Excel Saga DVDs were produced is really like a further expression of the show's lunacy. The packaging is very chaotic. You just have all this stuff being thrown at you. They give you these absurd goodies. That is Excel Saga at the end of the day. And I just think that's really beautiful. ADV Films is the company that dubbed Excel Saga and produced the DVDs. And I just wanted to shout them out because they were such influential anime distribution and dubbing company in the 90s and 2000s. They don't exist anymore. A lot of their properties were like absorbed by Crunchyroll, Funimation. They were just such a big deal though, and Excel Saga's dub is as good as it is because ADV Films truly cared about it, and just the titles they picked were really exciting. I mean, so many other studios would have just ignored Excel Saga. They would have said it's too niche, let alone too niche to dub. The fact that we didn't just get it released but dubbed and is dubbed as well as it is ADV Films going above and beyond here. So I don't think they get enough attention. People aren't always talking about them, and it's important to remember that companies like ADV Films helped introduce a lot of people to series like Evangelion, Excel Saga, and you know, they really did their part there.
An Excel collection can't be done.
But why not? Why not? Why not?
We've been talking a lot about how Excel Saga is a show that loves to push boundaries, going too far, things like that. And I think the best, most punk rock example of that is what they did with their final episode, which was banned and unable to air on television. Aptly titled Going Too Far, it is full of gratuitous sex, violence, nudity, inappropriate situations. There's a character who bleeds so much that the blood floods the planet. They redo the opening theme song, but the characters are all naked instead. This is an episode that is intentionally trying to push boundaries, and It even goes so far as to be a minute longer than what was allowed for broadcast length. And I think this is very important because it's showing that Excel Saga knew that this episode would never air on TV. They could have cut that minute so it would be allowed to air on TV, but the fact that they intentionally added an extra minute is a very intentional move to show that this was never going to air on TV. It's an episode that's all about censorship. It's an episode that's all about pushing boundaries, and an episode about just doing your own thing. And I think that's so brilliant. And so this episode was banned, it didn't air on TV, and it was instead included on the DVDs. And in the end, this becomes a really brilliant strategy to sell the DVDs. It's the type of thing that like South Park does, to create an episode that can't be seen, and if you want to see it, you gotta get the DVDs, or you gotta do this. Excel Saga really helps fan the flames of controversy and build this reputation up if you want to see this episode. And the thing is, there's nothing unusual about anime that include an extra OVA episode with the Blu-rays or DVD sets or whatever, or even with manga sometimes. It's par for the course to add an extra episode. So Excel Saga is really just doing that, but they've glossed it up in a silly special coat of paint where they're treating it like a controversy and being like, this is a banned episode. This isn't just an extra episode. You couldn't see this. The people didn't want you to see this. And to do an episode that's all about crossing lines is just so fantastic. It's the perfect fuck you farewell from Excel Saga that allows the anime to just go out on its own terms and just beautifully be itself. I can't think of a better way for this show to end. And just on top of that too, the anime ends with them joking about doing a spin-off called Puny Puny Poemi that is just kind of advertised as a fake show. Excel Saga actually made that a real show. It's only 2 episodes, but it's still a real show. And the fact of them just taking a gag like that, turning it into a real show and being like, no, this is real. Like in Puny Puny Poemi, the idea is that it was created by an in-universe Excel Saga character. Just the fact that they would create a whole anime to finish off a punchline is just the level of comedy that Excel Saga is operating at.
You fool! I don't need a script to draw storyboards! Since when is that? Poemi! It's Puny Puny Poemi time!
Yeah! We'll reuse the art again! Here we go!
This banned episode, the only other time I can think of an episode of anime that was actually banned and unavailable to find after the fact is Osamatsu-san's premiere. They were pushing too many boundaries with copyright issues, so the episode was banned. That was 2 decades later, though. And so the fact that Excel Saga is one of like 2 examples of this, and they did this 2 decades earlier, really just shows you why Excel Saga is in a league of its own. And the thing is, I really think Excel Saga could have done well if it was ever put on Adult Swim. There was a time when Adult Swim really wasn't airing comedies. You had your Tenchi Muyos every so often, but comedies weren't Adult Swim style when it came to anime, at least. And that kind of changed when they aired Pop Team Epic. It really would have been perfect if Adult Swim put Pop Team Epic and Excel Saga together as a block. That would have been the perfect Insanity anime block on Adult Swim. I do think Adult Swim could have really helped Excel Saga become more popular because, like I said, nobody is talking about it now. I do think it's a show that would be perfect for a modern reboot. There are so many modern anime trends that Excel Saga could riff on and make fun of. Even just the idea of all these anime reboots, continuation, sequel series. Excel Saga could have so much fun with like the new Urusei Yatsura, Ranma 1/2, Yashahime, Princess Half Demon, all of these things. Anime has just changed so much in the time since Excel Saga has ended that there is a lot more material that Excel Saga could play around with, that it's one of the few anime that actually justifies a modern return just because of the type of stories it was telling. And I mean, you could even have Across now trying to conquer the country. They've conquered the city, so why not try conquering the country? It would really be fun. I don't know if more people are going to ever learn about Excel Saga, if it is going to kind of have its boom. Like I said, I think it would perform much better today than it did 2 decades ago. So if we got a new version of it, maybe that's how we get Excel Saga relevant again. Maybe it will one day end up on Adult Swim, but until now, it's kind of just this fringe hit that I don't think gets the love that it deserves, but please watch it because it's one of a kind. It's truly one of a kind, guys. And if I'm not mistaken, I do think I hear the sound of another Big 3, fellow Otaku. Yep, it's Big 3 time. Okay, everybody, it is Big 3 time. For those of you that don't know, Big 3 is our kind of just odds and ends segment where we shine a light on anime or manga that you might have missed. There's so much anime out there, it's impossible to know about it all, and this is our way to highlight some stuff that's worth your time. And in honor of Excel Saga, we are doing a special themed version of the Big 3 that is looking at Koshi Rikdo and Shinichi Watanabe's other titles. And you know, if you like Excel Saga, you're probably gonna like these. So the first of the bunch is something we already mentioned. It is Municipal Force Daitenzen. This is a 1-volume manga by Koshi Rikdo. It looks at the Department of City Security, and like I said, it's basically a street-level Power Rangers kind of Sentai parody. You have Power Ranger-like characters solving local issues. If you're familiar with like the Rent-A-Hero video game series, it's very much cut from that cloth. It's just very funny to get these heightened Power Ranger kind of heroes in a local setting. We're seeing more modern anime that are riffing on that, like Go-Go Loser Ranger, of course, is cut from the same cloth. Like I said, Municipal Force Daitenzen kind of gets absorbed into Excel Saga, so a lot of its ideas are in that anime. At the same time, I do think it would be fun if they released a movie or an OVA of Municipal Force Daitenzen, just like Puny Puny Poemi, that kind of just does bring it to life in animation. But until that happens, or if that happens, you have it as a 1-volume manga.
It's too late, Mr. Rikdo. The cat's out of the bag. We know you wrote an amateur fan comic that became the prototype for Excel Saga.
The next of these series is Pandora in the Crimson Shell Ghost Urn. Pandora in the Crimson Shell Ghost Urn. What that is imagine if the Excel Saga creator, Koshi Rikdo, was given the keys to a Ghost in the Shell spinoff. This is such a weird series. I didn't know anything about this, and now it's my favorite thing ever. Basically, Ghost in the Shell's manga's creator, Masamune Shiro, created a spinoff that was then given to Koshi Rikdo to properly write. So Shiro came up with the idea, Rikdo actually wrote the story, and it looks at the first full-on cyborg in the Ghost in the Shell universe as they try to bring about world peace. You have this crazy story that has Rikdo's trademark eccentric sense of humor combined with Shiro's heady sci-fi ideas in this very weird Ghost in the Shell tangent that's like official canon at the end of the day too. This could have been a weird one-off thing, but it's 26 volumes. Like, it's almost as long as Excel Saga, so it really did become a big part of Rikdo's life. Ghost in the Shell is a franchise with so many weird tangents in it, but Pandora in the Crimson Shell Ghost Urn is the weirdest of those tangents, in my opinion. Like I said, it's a 26-volume manga, but at the same time, it's available as a 45-minute movie and then a 12-episode anime, so you can experience the story as an anime too. I do think it does a good job of capturing Rikdo's energy in the manga. It is such a weird series, though, so that is something else you need to check out. And the last of these is Tenchi Muyo GXP. Tenchi Muyo GXP is a 26-episode, 2012 anime that's the 4th entry in the Tenchi Muyo series. Tenchi Muyo was always a bit of a blind spot for me. I grew up in Canada. We did not have Adult Swim, so I really didn't see a lot of Tenchi Muyo content. I know some of it was on Adult Swim and Toonami. A lot of people found out about it through that way. But Tenchi Muyo GXP is such a weird anomaly. It happens concurrently with other Tenchi Muyo series, so the main Tenchi Muyo cast is busy in those shows. This instead focuses on Seina Yamada, who gets recruited to work for the Galaxy Police. They want Tenchi, they get Seina though. So this is a show that's happening at the same time as other Tenchi properties. Doesn't so much feel like a Shinichi Watanabe series, it feels more like a Tenchi Muyo show, even to the point where Watanabe was kind of confused why they asked him to direct it. It's definitely his biggest profile project after Excel Saga. It's an interesting anomaly though. A lot of the Tenchi Muyo fans don't like GXP. When it did air on Adult Swim, it was kind of banished to the 3 a.m. time slot because it wasn't popular. That being said, if you've never watched the franchise before, this is an interesting kind of entry point because you can kind of get in without any of the extra baggage that goes around the show. At the same time, I just do think interesting projects like this are fun scenarios. Like, Rikdo could have maybe used Tenchi Muyo GXP to be a huge launching point for him. Instead, it's kind of just like a good show, but not one that takes advantage of the person behind it the most. But at the same time, it's like, I could have just told you to watch Puny Puny Poemi again, but I've talked about that enough. You don't need to watch Puny Puny Poemi again. A little Muyo will do you good. Once again, for the big three, we have Municipal Force Daitenzen, we have Pandora in the Crimson Shell Ghost Urn, and we have Tenchi Muyo GXP.
Imagine me on a spaceship. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Oops, I've gotta go. Just spilled a drink on my computer.
And unfortunately, fellow otaku, that's all the time we have in this episode before I get isekai'd back to reality. We would once again like to thank you for going on this journey with us, because without you, we've got nothing, baby. We will see you later, Space Cowboys. Hail Il Palazzo!